what is your kind of takeaway on the depth of how this has been regulated in Europe?
It's quite significant. This is definitely a landmark deal that has broad implications, not just for European companies, but companies all over the world. I think that the fact that they're really looking to align with international definitions, so following and changing through these discussions to OECD definitions, indicates just how big of an impact this will have globally.
The whole difficulty was, on one side, fostering innovation, on the other side, well, protecting the rights of people, the user. And of course, this is why, what it was, 37 hours of negotiations that took place. Ashley, from your perspective, does this in any way protect and ultimately innovation in Europe? Because many were worried about some of the startups, Mistral, for example, in France.
Sure. I think that it's really to be determined how this is going to be enforced and the implications. But I do think that what's been drafted is really what we've seen from the dialogues, because we haven't actually seen the text of the final act, will be left to how it's enforced. That said, I do think that really relying on product safety assurance mechanisms like third-party audits will hopefully provide that balance between innovation for companies and then protection of the public.
What's notable, of course, is, yes, we've had an EO here in the US. Yes, we've had much talk of regulation, but ultimately this is the first time you get real fines being outlined. I mean, look, they only add up to about 35 million euros, but that's a lot if you're a small company. And indeed, it could be 7% of global turnover for big companies. Thierry Breton, of course, key negotiator in all of this, trying to drive it across the line when it comes to the EU. He was talking about basically how much the EU is leading here. Is it? And how much do you think this is going to set the scene for the global AI players here? Because ultimately, it's only OpenAI that seems to be affected thus far.
It's a great question. It's funny that you're sharing that post, I guess, is what we're calling tweets now. And the reason why is because there's been a lot of conversations in nations all over the world. You mentioned the US's recent AI executive order that's really looking to understand the implications of these systems and drive some good guardrails around how to, again, kind of balance innovation, protect the public, but even really think through what different implications of these systems are, given that AI is not one specific thing. And I think that there was a lot of countries that wanted to get to that gate first and get some regulation out there. And so it's great that Europe did that. But I do think that there's actually a converging of a lot of these different guardrails in different formats all over the world.
Ashley, whether it's at the Parliament or Commission level in Europe or Congress here in America, do the people writing the rules and the regulation have a deep enough understanding of what it is that they're regulating?
It's definitely going to be a resource implication in any country that's looking to oversee some of these rules. That said, I don't think that they're doing it alone. We've seen how there's been a large amount of public participation in these processes, civil society organizations providing feedback on an ongoing basis, companies that are brought to the table through not just some of this drafting dialogue, but as we've seen with some of the voluntary codes that have come out and that were even referenced in the work from the Commission, the G7 Hiroshima process, that those companies are at the table providing input, and I think we'll start to see that through enforcement. And again, there's a reliance on standards which are typically developed by industry. So it's a bit of a misnomer to think that it's just going to be relying on resources provided by the government.